Hello everybody, welcome and or welcome back to my channel. This week I wanted to bring you guys along with me to read a very fun and new exciting release. I thought that it would be really interesting to document it for various reasons, but let me show you what the book is before I get into those details. We will be reading Our Perfect Storm by Carley Fortune. This is the 5th novel that she has released, and she primarily writes romance, I would say a little bit mix of like women's fiction, but it is primarily the romance genre. And why I say that this video will be interesting and why I thought to pick up the camera is because I've read every single book by her, and I'm gonna be honest, I think out of the 4 books that I read of hers, I've only genuinely loved one of them, unfortunately. Let's set the scene. I read Every Summer After when it first came out years back. Loved it, hated the ending. Really disliked the ending. It kind of just ruined the entire book for me. I then went ahead and read Meet Me at the Lake. Didn't really like the premise of that story either. It wasn't a bad book, not bad writing, just the plot really fell flat for me. I thought I would give her 3rd book a chance, and I'm actually failing to remember what the name of it is, and that's just kind of how I felt about the entire book. It wasn't rememberable for me. I don't even really remember what the plot was. It just didn't sit with me. So I heavily debated reading One Golden Summer when it was released last year. However, I was seeing remarkable reviews for it, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna give it a try. The covers are all stunning, I will give her that, and she definitely, one thing she does very well in every single one of her books, despite me not absolutely falling in love with all of them, is that she can really set that summer scene, and that's what I was looking for last year. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna give One Golden Summer a chance. It does have characters that connect back to the first book and Every Summer After, so I was a little skeptical, but I absolutely fell in love with it. It was so unexpected, but it was one of my favorite reads of last year. 5 stars all the way. I might even reread it this summer because it was perfect in my opinion. And so I am very curious on how Our Perfect Storm will settle with me. I've been seeing really great reviews so far. It is new, like I said, it just came out this month. However, I've seen a lot of ARC readers rate it, and it's been a pretty good response so far. So I'm very excited to read it. My only qualm right now with it is that it was only released in a hardcover, which good for you, Carly. I hope you're doing well. I think this means that you're doing well, but all the other books have been released in paperbacks, which that's okay. It's still a gorgeous cover that we have here. I also want to put a disclaimer into this intro saying that this video will contain spoilers. So if you have not read Our Perfect Storm and you have interest in reading it, or I don't know, maybe if you want to stay and you don't really care about spoilers, go ahead, be my guest. However, this is your sign now to come back to this video if you would like, once you've read Our Perfect Storm. But I do want to contain spoilers because I feel like every time that I have to do extreme non-spoilers for new releases, it's just very generic, you know, because like obviously we can't go into too much depth about how I'm feeling, what the emotions are, and why. So disclaimer, I'm going to contain spoilers in this reading vlog. Okay? Okay, so starting off, I actually started reading this yesterday. I got to like page 30 last night, and then I went ahead and read a little bit more this morning when I was doing my treadmill walk at 6 in the morning. I'm just better than everyone else. No, I'm kidding. I was exhausted, but I got a few more chapters in on the treadmill this morning, and I ended up at chapter 9 at page 59, and I am flying through this book. The writing is so fast-paced, and I am enjoying it so far. I think it's really cute. The setup so far is that we are following Frankie and her relationship and friendship with George, who is her best friend. They met when they were 8 years old. They were neighbors, and they live in kind of like a foresty area or like outside of Toronto, I think, but it's in Canada somewhere. But they became instant best friends when they were 8 years old. They both have traumatic backgrounds in their families, and so they were a little disconnected from there, and they found that bond with each other very early on. They are now about 30 years old, and the setup is that Frankie was engaged to another man, and you can tell that there's a little bit of tension. Something happened during Christmas time a few months back with Frankie and George where they had a big blowout fight. We don't know what the fight was about yet, but you can tell that nobody's really happy that she is engaged to this other man named Nate. Nobody dislikes Nate for any particular reason. He's not a bad guy. They just are not like the biggest fans of him, which I presume is because everyone just kind of like wants her to be with George because her entire family is obsessed with George. He's like a part of their family. She's a part of his family. It's just that kind of bond that they have. So that's where we are. However, plot twist, this is where the spoilers come in. I just a few chapters back read, which I guess it's not really a spoiler. I think it's in the description of this book, but the wedding doesn't happen. We are like the night before the wedding. It doesn't happen. Nate actually leaves Frankie. And from what I can tell from being in Frankie's point of view is I don't think she realizes that she's in love with George, but it's very clear that she's in love with George. Maybe she realizes it, but she kind of is just like, no, he's my best friend. Like, we're soulmates. But like, I don't think she realizes the type of connection that they have. They don't see much of each other currently just because they had their big blowout fight around Christmas. So they haven't been that close in the last few months. However, he also travels for work. So George travels. We know that he sleeps around a little bit. He doesn't have any committed relationships, but he's a journalist. And so he's always on the go. And for all that Frankie knows is she's just like, oh yeah, he doesn't like commitment, you know, because he's traveling all the time. So that's the extent of what we know about each of the characters so far. But Frankie's really going through it because she does not want to move back into her parents' house. She was able to stay with her best friend and her girlfriend for some time. However, it's time for her to get out of their space, and she's realizing she has to go home and rethink kind of what her next steps in her life are. She does have experience with like cooking and baking, and so she's kind of leaning into that. And I think she does have a job like making recipes, but she's just stuck now because she was really banking on obviously this life with Nate, and Nate made really good money as a professor and he was slightly older than her. And so obviously when something traumatic like this happens in such a short span of time, you have to really like rethink a lot of things in life. And George isn't with her right now because he had a job that he had to get to, and obviously he couldn't just like drop everything to stay with her that last minute. So I think they're about to reconnect though, and I'm very excited to continue reading more about them. So far I think that their relationship is really sweet. You do get kind of like a dual timeline where you go back and forth. It started off when they were 8, and then we just saw a clip of them when they were 10 years old. So I'm assuming it's just gonna continue to go up in age until probably whatever their big fight was last Christmas. And I hope it's not something that is like brought up a bunch of times and then it's like disappointing or just like lackluster when you get there, because that happens a lot with like third act conflicts where it's like they keep referring to like this big mystery and weird thing that happened, and then when you get there you're kind of like, hello, like really? Which, I don't know. I just won't put too much of an emphasis or like expectation on it. I don't know. Those are my thoughts right now though. I'm really excited about it and I'm going to continue reading it. I think I'll be able to get pretty far actually tonight, because even when I was on the treadmill this morning, I just like cooked through those like 30 pages. I don't know. Here we go. I'll let you guys know my thoughts when I have more to talk about. Later, but I have made it to my bed, and I've also made it to chapter 18, page 131 in Our Perfect Storm. I do have a couple updates. My first one is that right after I filmed that clip, I went outside and did some reading. I kid you not, like 2 chapters later, they literally explained the fight that they had on Christmas, which I actually really appreciated, as you can probably tell from my previous clip. I found it to be a pretty realistic argument and something that could happen. And I also enjoyed that they told us not too long after, because I just think that that is a pet peeve of mine, is when they keep referencing something that happened in the past and then they don't really like dive into it until the very end, and then it's just kind of like a disappointing situation. But all in all, I just thought that that was funny that like 2 chapters later, they literally dive into it. So nothing to worry about there. But now I am on chapter 18, and where we have progressed is George comes to the rescue because Frankie's not doing too well. And he's like, we're going to go on your honeymoon, because the honeymoon wasn't set until like a month, I think, after the wedding. And he's like, you know, part of it's paid for. I'm home. This is going to cure your heartbreak. And she's like, okay, like I guess, like I just kind of want to spend time with you. So they go to the honeymoon and they're in, I'm pretty sure you pronounce it Tofino. I actually don't remember, but it's on the other side of Canada, I think around like Vancouver, BC area. They're on day 2. Day 1, they kind of were just settling in. There's a little bit of like humor in the book with the hotel manager that kind of got them settled in, which I appreciate. I love like little like off side characters that are a little quirky. It just adds a little bit more to like the overall story, and then I feel like it makes it so that the main characters have like some type of inside joke or something to kind of like banter between each other. So I thought that that was really funny too, and I hope he makes more appearances because I just like having the addition of other characters in books. Anyways, now we're on day 2, which is Indulge. George has this whole plan and this whole itinerary of how he's gonna get Frankie out of her heartbreak, and we don't get to know what the itinerary is. She just kind of has to go along with it. Day 1 was a wallowing, and so he was like, you just kind of have to wallow and, I don't know, just feel bad for yourself. And she kind of partway through it was like, I really don't want to do this anymore. Like, I've been doing this for like a month now. I kind of want to like start having fun and like get over it and be with you. And then you get a couple of other flashbacks of times that they've had too, but I feel like we're kind of building a little bit more of their friendship now, and I kind of need that because right now I'm having a hard time understanding how they've gotten this far just being friends. And I do believe in platonic friendships, but like, they literally have each other's names tattooed on each other, which is a interesting choice. I don't know, like if my fiance had his girl best friend's name tattooed onto his ribcage, I don't know. That's just me. Like, I get it. I get platonic friendships and I understand that there are certain circumstances, but I just need the background. I need the background because they were roommates at one point. We know that. I mean, just they're so connected to each other. So like, thank God that they're going to, I mean, we know they're going to end up together. I just feel like that's not a spoiler. It's a romance novel, but thank God they've gotten to this point. And I'm so curious because I just know and hope, I guess, that it's going to come full circle with Nate, her fiance that left her. And I feel like, this is my prediction, I predict that maybe Nate had a conversation with George and George isn't telling Frankie this, or maybe like Nate just had this like realization when George showed up that like, oh, I can't marry her because clearly, because I think during the time that she was with Nate, he only met George a couple of times, and I don't think any of those times were like huge indicators of like how different she is, because that's one of the main reasons that like George really didn't like Nate. I mean, of course, I'm sure he's in love with Frankie, but one of the big reasons why he was like so against the relationship was because he felt like Frankie didn't act like herself and she was kind of like hiding in like a shell of her personality and not really being like the loud, boisterous person that she typically is around Nate, and she was trying to like contain that because he's a really like, Nate was a really poised guy. I have so many thoughts and we're like not even halfway through this book, but this is why I didn't want it to be spoiler free, because then I couldn't say like any of this. More side note that I do appreciate about the first part of the book is I am glad that we're not really making Nate out to be a villain, so to speak. Like, yes, he did leave her the night before the wedding, but I feel like for the most part they've talked really positive about him and his character, and I do appreciate that because it's kind of a different take on this type of story where usually like the ex is a villain, or you know, they're coming from out of a toxic relationship. This is more so her just like actually finding herself and realizing what she actually wants in life, which is not Nate and it is George, and it is just like other things in her life. She wants to go be more adventurous and have her personality back. So I do like that direction that Carley Fortune is taking, but so far, again, so good. I'm excited to see where these next few days take them and how that ties back into their past, because I feel like she's done a good job also so far of tying in the past to kind of what they're doing in the present day. We are on to day 2 of Indulge. I'm realizing I'm in the same t-shirt, and I promise it's clean. I just sleep in oversized tees a couple of nights and then I wash them. It's a thing. We have to move on now. I am almost pretty much halfway done with Our Perfect Storm now. I'm like right at almost the 200 page mark, and there's like 400 pages. And I went down to the pool earlier today just to get a little bit of sun right when I got off work. I tried to read, but I only got realistically like one chapter of reading done because it got really windy. It was impossible. It was literally so overstimulating. And so I got like one chapter in, but like I said, I'm on almost page 200 now, chapter 24, and not too much to update on right now. I am really liking it. I feel like I'm not, and maybe this is a pet peeve of some people's, but I'm not feeling super connected to the characters. Like, I know them and I guess I know things about them, but I feel like we're not diving too much into anything outside of just their relationship, which is fine. But there's just been like little drops here and there of like some personal things, and I think it's potentially leading up to more depth later on in the book, because like I said, we've been kind of dropping hints of more emotional, personal things that have gone on in their lives that have impacted why they're not together. That's kind of where I'm at right now, but I am really excited, honestly, because I haven't read a book this fast in a really long time, and so I am appreciating how fast of a read it is, and it is very addicting, and I am very much looking forward to like what's happening next. Like, I don't really want to put it down when I'm reading it, so that's all I got. They did bring up the tattoos, just like very briefly, and they were like mentioning, has it ever bugged any of your partners? And he was like, no, I don't regret it at all. No. And she was like, like in her head, and she was like, yeah, it's bugged some people that I've been with. And I'm like, yeah. You have the name George tattooed on your ribcage, I'd be like, who's that? Like, oh, okay, that's my only thing. That's my only thing with this, is I'm kind of like, do people do that? Like, I'm sure people do, but like, oh my god. At 18, they got them when they were 18 together. I'm just like, I had guy best friends growing up. I would never. Anyways. I can't keep this thing up to save my life. I don't know if I'm in the frame, but I wrapped up work a little bit early today, and it is about 20 minutes out for my nail appointment, so I'm just sitting in my car reading. I've gotten a couple of chapters read, and then I read a little bit this morning before work because I got the day started pretty early, and I am having feelings, mostly of confusion, and I'm feeling very like contradicted in my mind right now because I cannot tell if I like George or not, and then sometimes I can't really tell if I really like Frankie or not, because I think I do, and from being in Frankie's perspective so far, I feel like she is making some growth in her journey. Granted, she's only been broken up with for like 2 months at this point or whatever, and then they're only on day like 3 or 4 of the trip. Hard to tell, and I feel like some of her actions have been very, I don't know if it's naive is the right word, maybe just like clueless, because it's like, how did you not know? Really? Like, I know that we're getting flashbacks of her and George where like they've had some like miscommunication, which is fair, like some of it has been fair, but then I'm also not really too convinced on George either. If I just personally like George, I think George seems fine, and I think he does love Frankie, but there's just something missing for me that's not really clicking so far. I'm still enjoying the story and the book. I'm just like, the whole romance aspect of it, I think, is just really confusing for me. Like, I feel like I should be a little more giddy about them getting together, and honestly, I'm just a little more curious about how their dynamic works, honestly, and why, again, they have never gotten together until now they're 30, and they've known each other since they were 8. I don't know. I guess I'm being a little picky here, but those are my feelings right now. I'll probably end up reading just one more chapter, and then I gotta head up to do my nail appointment. I'm gonna spend the rest of the night reading. I'm on page 228 out of like 400, so I'm over halfway, and I really think it would be cool, awesome, so fun if I finish the book tonight, but we'll see, because I get pretty sleepy, especially on Fridays, because it's the end of the work week. If not tonight, then tomorrow. And I'll let you guys know my full thoughts then. of underestimated how tired I would be tonight. I am under 100 pages. What am I trying to say? I have under 100 pages left and I'm flying through it. I got a late start to reading tonight because I went on a long walk and watched Modern Family for a little bit, to be honest, but I have just been sitting here binging the last like however many pages, and now I have around 80 more pages. I totally could finish it, but it's 11 o'clock and I think I'm gonna go to bed, but I'll finish it tomorrow and I'll let you guys know my final thoughts then. It is the next day and I have officially finished Our Perfect Storm by Carley Fortune. I do have a lot of thoughts, so I think we're going to walk through them together because I don't think any of the thoughts are absolutely complete, if that makes any sense. However, I think first things first is my initial feeling and standing on this book is that I am going to rate it a 3.5 stars. I don't think a 3 or 3.5 stars is a bad rating. It just means that it was okay. It's pretty average. I was a little underwhelmed, if I'm going to be completely honest. I think this is where my thoughts kind of begin. These are all the good things that I have to say about it. It was a very quick read. I think it was still very atmospheric. I don't think I felt as summery as I did with her previous books. However, again, it was a quick read. I ran through it really fast. I really liked the development and the growth that we saw with both of our main characters. I feel like it was, as much as I was kind of complaining before about how they maybe could have gotten together at a much younger age, because it's like, how do you not confess these feelings to each other? It definitely started to make a little more sense as the book went on, with a lot of things that George started to confess and talk about, and then just kind of realizing both of their backstories a little bit more gave it a much more deeper understanding, of course, of why they may have felt like kind of resistant to confessing those feelings, which I do understand. I, however, still just don't understand the whole tattoo situation, but that's besides the point. To add on to that, I do understand that part now. However, I do like that part now, despite me kind of complaining about it earlier. And with that, I enjoyed the emphasis on finding yourself and creating your own life and having your own experiences before settling down. And not that they really even settled down, because they're still doing both of their own things and they both have their own creative outlets and their own lives and personalities. But I think that is so important, because this might sound very hypocritical because I am with my high school sweetheart, but I am a very huge advocate for like living your own life, doing your own things, having your own hobbies and your own friends, and finding your way. And I think they were both very confused and very lost at a young age. And so I do not think it would have worked if they were younger and had just gotten together just because. Like, I think they both needed to go live their lives, and they had a lot of things personally that they both had to work through in order to find their way to each other. So I did appreciate that kind of like roundabout explanation, because at first I was just so confused. I was like, this doesn't really make any sense why they've never confessed their feelings before, but you just find out more about it later on. I still think some things, okay, before I get way too ahead of myself, those are the things that I really liked about the book, and I thought overall it was an okay read. Things that I disliked about it, I think for these characters, although we did see that growth and development on paper, they still, both of them felt very two-dimensional to me. Like, I don't think you necessarily have to absolutely connect with characters in a book. I think that's the glory of like reading and reading about different people and places and times, is that you are gaining knowledge on different perspectives and everything. But they really felt two-dimensional to me. We found out some things about them, but nothing tugged at the heartstrings. Nothing felt like it was an emotional connection to me. They're just kind of characters on a piece of paper, if that makes sense. And so it didn't really, I don't know. I just think when I think of other books and how One Golden Summer was, they're just they just fell flat for me, is how are my initial thoughts. I just can't get over the tattoos. It's weird to me. I don't know. I thought maybe that I would overlook it at some point or gain an open mind to it. But it's just like at 18, you and your guy best friend are gonna go get tattoos of each other's names on your ribs. And you don't think people are gonna feel a certain way about it? Like, I don't know. I just think with the characters feeling very two-dimensional, I also think Frankie was just kind of dumb a lot of the time. It's like, how did you not know that George was in love with you? Like, I know she kind of explains it towards the end where she's like, well, he gave signs that he wasn't. And I'm like, yeah, but at some point when you were like in your 20s, you didn't kind of think like maybe that was him pushing himself away from you? I don't know. It just felt a little unrealistic. And then also George was annoying me with how he was pushing himself away from Frankie and being like, I'll tell her one day. And then he's shocked when she gets engaged at 30. I'm like, that's a very normal age to like want to start your life with a partner. So, and then he's like upset about it. And it's like, well, I get why you're upset because they had only known each other for 6 months, but also you can't really be upset because you never really did. Like, he just ran away. And I know they figure all that out later and they apologize and it's all fine and dandy, but it was kind of just frustrating because it was like, okay, this is like miscommunication ultimate boss. Like, I don't know. I guess those were like the things that just bugged me about it that I just didn't find very realistic. I don't want to continue to compare it to One Golden Summer because obviously they're different books, different characters, different stories. Oh, I'm just a little disappointed. Like, it did kind of fall a little bit more flat for me. I do think compared to her other books, I did like it much, much more. I do really like Every Summer After. I just really didn't like the ending. So it's kind of like in line with Every Summer After, and then One Golden Summer is just like at the top, and the other two I don't even really remember what they were about. But I think it was, I don't think it was horrible. I think I'll continue to give her a chance because I do think she has such a knack for writing those atmospheric reads. I think she's kind of finding her rhythm in that, and I think she does have good stories to tell. And I just think if we kind of fleshed out their characters a little bit more, it would have landed a little bit easier on me. I think there was a big story to tell here with being childhood friends to lovers, and it is a pretty long book. Granted, the margins are pretty big, and so I feel like with it being a hardcover, it'll probably be smaller as a paperback. I think there was just so much to these characters that there wasn't enough space and room to flesh them out completely, because you had George, and he had a lot going on in his personal life, and then you had his grandma, who also was very interesting, but we didn't see a lot of her. You had Frankie, who had a lot going on in her personal life, and her mom, who left her at a young age, and so there was a lot to go around there, but then they kind of resolved it, which was for me. Like, it still just felt kind of unresolved in some ways. And then we had like her brothers who were involved, and her ex-fiance Nate, who was a part of the situation. And I just feel like there was a lot of moving pieces and so much we could have done with it, but there were too many directions. And it really, and it's a romance, so like it just focused on the romance, but I don't know, there was a lot to bounce off of because they have known each other pretty much their entire lives. And so I think there was just more that we could have, more context we could have had provided to us to, one, not only flesh out these characters, but also bring more of a connection to them. Because I feel like when Frankie realized 2 days into the trip that maybe she could be in love with George, it was like, well, you have spent so much of this time together, and she was kind of looking at it from more of a sensual aspect, I feel like. And I know that they do have like a personal friend connection, and so that was never their issue, but I don't know. I guess it just felt very flat and two-dimensional for me, but it was overall just like a good romance, just not one of my favorites. And I'm just very much such like a women's fiction, literary fiction, whatever reader at this point, that I think I'm a little harsh when it comes to romances, because I just sometimes want more to the story and more to the characters than, oh, we're falling in love and that's it. And so maybe it's just a me problem. That could just be it. However, I'm still gonna give her next book a try because I don't think she's necessarily a bad author. I just think maybe she has hits and misses for me, but you also cannot deny that these covers are absolutely gorgeous and very consistent with that. So I don't know, I thought it was a fun and interesting experiment. Maybe you guys have also read this book at this point. I hope so, because I pretty much just spoiled every single thing to you guys. I also think it's a pretty predictable read, so do with that what you will. But let me know down in the comments below if you guys have read Our Perfect Summer, or if you've read other Carley Fortune books, and what your thoughts are. And I hope that my jumbled up thoughts and word vomit that I just put onto you guys makes sense. Those are my thoughts on Carley Fortune's Our Perfect Storm. 3.5 stars. Let me know your thoughts down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you ever so feel like doing it. I won't pressure you, but just a friendly reminder here to like and subscribe. And thank you guys so much for staying up until this point in the video. I hope to see you guys next time. Bye.